Hello there, and welcome to the Quiet Commodity channel. I'm so glad you found your way here. Maybe you had a long day surrounded by screens and noise, or maybe you're the kind of person who finds comfort in the rustle of pages and the scratch of a pen rather than counting sheep. Either way, tonight's journey is for you. You've got nothing to do but rest. Let your mind settle like dust on a library shelf, your breathing slow like the turning of an ancient page, and your body grows still as a book left open in lamplight. Because tonight, we aren't simply learning about paper. We're drifting through its fibers and folds, through pulp and parchment, through the quiet permanence of ink. So consider liking and subscribing to help other sleepy souls find their way here. Now let's begin. Wasps invented paper millions of years before humans. Long before any person thought to pulp a plant, wasps were already master paper makers. They chew wood fibers, mixing them with saliva to create a grey pulp, which they spread in thin layers to build their nests. These papery structures are waterproof, lightweight, and strong. For millennia, wasps demonstrated the principle: break down plant matter, suspend it in liquid, let it dry into sheets. Humans eventually noticed, learned, and followed their lead into the craft. Papyrus is not true paper. In ancient Egypt, scribes wrote on papyrus made by pressing together strips of the papyrus reed that grew along the Nile. The pith was sliced thin, laid crosswise in layers, pounded flat, and dried in the sun. It was smooth enough for hieroglyphs, durable enough for scrolls, but it was not paper. True paper is made from macerated fibers suspended in water and formed into sheets. Papyrus is laminated plant strips. The distinction is technical but meaningful. Paper was invented in China around 105 AD. A court official named Kai Lun is credited with creating the first true paper by pulping tree bark, hemp, rags, and fishnets into a slurry, then spreading it on screens to dry. Before this, the Chinese wrote on bamboo strips and silk, both expensive or cumbersome. Kai Lun's invention was lighter, cheaper, and revolutionary. It allowed knowledge to spread, records to multiply, and thoughts to be preserved on a material both humble and enduring. The process remained secret for centuries. For nearly 500 years, papermaking was a closely guarded Chinese secret. It spread slowly along the Silk Road, carried by travelers, merchants, and eventually prisoners of war who knew the technique. By the 8th century, papermaking had reached the Islamic world. By the 12th century, it arrived in Europe. Each culture adapted the process, but the core remained: fiber, water, screen, and patience. Secrets do not stay hidden forever, but they travel slowly, like ink soaking into cloth. Parchment came from animal skin. Before paper reached Europe, scribes wrote on parchment and vellum made by stretching, scraping, and treating the skins of sheep, goats, or calves. The process was labor-intensive, and the material was precious. A single Bible might require the skins of hundreds of animals. Parchment was durable, almost eternal, but expensive. Paper, when it arrived, was a miracle of economy, a surface made from plants and rags instead of slaughter and scarcity. Medieval paper was made from linen rags. Early European papermakers collected old linen and cotton clothing, linens, and sailcloth. These textiles were shredded, soaked in water, and beaten into pulp by water-powered hammers in the darkness of mills. The fibers broke down slowly, mixing with water into a thick, cream-colored slurry. This rag paper was strong, absorbent, and archival. Many medieval manuscripts written on rag paper still exist today, their pages yellowed but intact, testimony to the strength of cloth transformed. The papermaker's mold is called a decal. A decal is a wooden frame covered with a fine wire screen or woven cloth. The papermaker dips it into the vat of pulp, lifting it carefully so water drains through the mesh, leaving a thin layer of fibers behind. The wooden edges of the frame create a natural, irregular border called a decal edge, slightly thicker and softer than the center. Handmade paper still bears this signature, a feathered margin that feels organic under the thumb, proof of its origins. Paper is mostly water before it dries. When the decal is lifted from the vat, the sheet clinging to the screen is fragile, saturated, barely holding together. It is more water than fiber, a delicate suspension that could collapse at any moment. The papermaker must press it gently, transferring it to felt, stacking sheet upon sheet with layers of cloth between. Slowly, under pressure, the water is expelled. What remains is paper, thin and strong, transformed by the simple act of removal, of letting go of what was never needed. Watermarks are shadows in the paper. A watermark is created by sewing a design in wire onto the papermaker's screen. Where the wire sits, the pulp settles thinner, creating a translucent image visible only when the paper is held to the light. Watermarks identify the maker, the mill, or the year of production. They are ghosts in the page, invisible in ordinary light, revealed only in illumination. They prove provenance, authenticity, and origin, a signature written in absence rather than presence. Paper was once pressed between stones. In the paper-making mill, the transition from wet pulp to usable sheet required immense force. After the delicate, wet sheets were stacked with layers of felt, they were placed under massive stone weights or wooden screw presses. This pressure didn't just flatten the paper, it expelled the water and forced the fibers to bond tightly together on a microscopic level. The pressing could take days. It was this crushing weight that transformed a fragile, watery web into a dense, permanent surface. Sizing makes paper less absorbent. Raw paper soaks up liquid like a sponge, making it useless for writing. To solve this, papermakers treat sheets with sizing, traditionally made from animal gelatin or plant starches. The sizing fills the gaps between fibers, creating a subtle barrier that allows ink to sit on the surface rather than bleeding through. Without sizing, letters would blur and spread. With it, words hold their shape, crisp and legible, preserved against the pull of absorption. The smell of old books is called biblical. There is a specific word for the comforting, dusty scent of a library. Interestingly, this famous aroma of vanilla and almond comes primarily from books made in the last 150 years. It is caused by the breakdown of lignin, a chemical compound found in wood pulp paper. As lignin oxidizes, it releases volatile organic compounds that smell like grass and old vanilla. It is the scent of slow chemistry, the perfume of wood returning to dust, creating the atmosphere of nostalgia we associate with reading. Rag paper lasts longer because it lacks lignin. Unlike the wood pulp books that smell so sweet but turn brittle and yellow quickly, ancient rag paper made from cotton or linen is chemically stable. Because it contains almost no lignin or acids, it does not self-destruct. Medieval manuscripts written on rag paper remain flexible and white after 5 centuries, while a paperback from 1950 might already be crumbling. The choice of material determines the legacy. What is made with purity endures, while what is made cheaply fades away. The Gutenberg Bible was printed on rag paper. When Johannes Gutenberg printed his famous Bible around 1455, he used handmade rag paper for most copies, though a few were printed on vellum. The paper was thick, creamy, and durable, able to withstand the pressure of the press and the weight of ink. Those Bibles still exist, their pages intact after more than 500 years. They are monuments not just to printing, but to the material that received the impression, the silent partner in revolution. Iron gall ink was the standard for centuries. Made from oak galls, iron salts, gum arabic, and water, iron gall ink was used from the Middle Ages through the 19th century. When first applied, it appears pale brown or grey, but as it oxidizes, it darkens to deep black or blue-black. It bonds chemically with the paper, becoming nearly permanent. Even after centuries, iron gall ink remains legible, though it can corrode the page, eating through fibers with slow, patient acidity. Quills were cut from goose feathers. The primary feather of a goose's wing, strong and slightly curved, was the preferred writing instrument for over 1,000 years. The tip was cut at an angle with a sharp knife, creating a nib that held ink in its hollow shaft and released it in a controlled flow. Each quill lasted only a week before needing to be recut. Writing was an act of maintenance, of sharpening and trimming, of caring for the tool as much as the thought. A blotter absorbs excess ink. Before ink dried quickly, writers used blotting paper, a highly absorbent, unsized paper that soaked up wet ink from the page. After writing a line, the scribe would press a blotter gently over the words, preventing smudging and speeding the drying process. Blotters were disposable, stained with mirror images of text, backwards and fragmentary. They were the shadows of writing, the evidence of care taken to preserve clarity. The pencil was invented in the 16th century. Graphite, a form of carbon, was discovered in England in the 1500s. It was soft enough to leave marks but did not require a liquid medium like ink. Early pencils were simply sticks of graphite wrapped in string or encased in wood. The marks could be erased, corrected, revised. The pencil gave writers permission to make mistakes, to sketch and draft without the permanence of ink. It was forgiveness in physical form. Paper is bitten by the letterpress. When a sheet of paper is pressed against inked metal type, the pressure creates a slight indentation called bite or impression. You can feel it with your fingertips, the words pressed into the surface, embossed in reverse. This tactile quality is prized in fine printing. The page remembers the press, carries the mark of metal meeting fiber, a scar that is also a signature, proof that something physical touched it and left meaning behind. Handmade paper has two sides. The side that touches the screen during formation is called the wire side, and it bears a faint texture from the mesh. The top side, called the felt side, is smoother, having been pressed against cloth. In fine printing and writing, the felt side is preferred for its superior surface, but both sides are usable. The paper does not discriminate. It simply offers what it has: texture on one face, smoothness on the other. The codex replaced the scroll. Early texts were written on long scrolls that had to be unrolled to read. The codex, a bound book with pages that turn, emerged in the Roman Empire and gradually replaced the scroll. The codex was more compact, easier to reference, and allowed readers to flip between sections. It transformed how knowledge was stored and accessed. The book as we know it, with spine and pages, is a codex, a format so practical it has endured for 2 millennia. Book bindings were sewn by hand. Before industrial binding, each book was assembled by hand. Folded sheets, called signatures, were stacked and sewn together through the fold with linen thread. The spine was reinforced with glue and cloth, and boards were attached to protect the pages. This process took hours for a single volume. The binding held everything together, literal and metaphorical, making scattered pages into a singular, navigable object. Gold leaf adorned the edges of pages. Wealthy patrons commissioned books with gilded edges where thin sheets of gold were applied to the trimmed edges of the pages. When the book was closed, the edges gleamed. It was a display of wealth, yes, but also a preservation technique. The gold protected the page edges from dust, moisture, and handling. Beauty and function merged. The book became both text and treasure, knowledge wrapped in light. The spine of a book faces outward on a shelf. This orientation, now universal, was not always standard. Early books were shelved with their 4 edges outward, titles written on the page edges rather than the spine. The modern spine, with the title printed vertically, emerged as libraries grew and shelving became denser. The spine became the book's face, its identifier, the part that speaks to you from across the room, whispering its name in gilt letters. Marbled paper was made by floating ink on water. Artisans would float oil-based pigments on a tray of thickened water, swirling them into patterns with combs and styluses. A sheet of paper was then laid on the surface, lifting the design in a single, unrepeatable print. Marbled paper adorned the end papers of fine books, each sheet unique, a frozen moment of liquid color transformed into solid beauty. No two were the same. Each was a small miracle of controlled chaos. The blank page is a field of snow. Before the first word is written, the page lies open, silent, and white. It is potential made visible, a surface waiting for meaning. Some find it intimidating, this emptiness that demands to be filled. Others find it peaceful, a clean beginning free from error or regret. The blank page does not judge, it simply waits, patient as winter, ready to receive whatever you bring to it, word by word, line by line. Paper can be folded into art. Origami, the Japanese art of paper folding, transforms a flat sheet into cranes, flowers, boxes, and dragons without cutting or gluing. Each fold is precise, each crease a decision. The paper remembers every fold, holding its new shape through tension and geometry. What was formless becomes form. What was two-dimensional becomes three-dimensional. It is alchemy without heat, transformation through patience and pressure applied by human hands. Love letters were sealed with wax. Before envelopes, letters were folded and sealed with melted wax, often stamped with a signet ring. The wax preserved privacy and proved the letter had not been opened. Breaking the seal was an intimate act, a small destruction that granted access to words meant for one person alone. The letter, once opened, could not be resealed. It was a one-way passage, vulnerability delivered and received, preserved in ink and paper. Journals hold the shape of days. A journal is a place where thoughts accumulate layer by layer, day by day. Some entries are mundane, others profound. Together they form a record of a life lived, not filtered or curated, but raw and honest. The page is yellow. The ink fades, but the act of writing remains, a conversation with the self, conducted in solitude, preserved for a future reader who may be you, years older, looking back at who you were. Marginalia are whispers in the margins. Readers have always written notes in the margins of books, annotations, arguments, questions, and exclamations. These marginal notes, called marginalia, reveal how a text was read, what it provoked, and how it lived in the mind of the reader. They are conversations across time, readers responding to authors, future readers discovering past readers. The margins are not empty space. They are where thought spills over, where the book becomes dialogue. Palimpsests are pages reused. In times when parchment was scarce, scribes would scrape away old text and write new words over the faint traces of what came before. These recycled pages, called palimpsests, contain layers of meaning, texts buried beneath texts. Modern imaging can sometimes reveal the erased writing, bringing ghost words back to light. The page remembers even when it has been told to forget. The printing press democratized knowledge. Before Gutenberg, books were copied by hand, a slow and expensive process that kept knowledge rare. The printing press allowed texts to be reproduced quickly and cheaply, making books accessible to more people. Ideas spread faster, literacy increased. The Reformation, the Renaissance, and the Scientific Revolution were all accelerated by the press. The machine did not create thought, but it carried thought farther and faster than ever before. Illuminated manuscripts glowed with gold. Medieval monks decorated manuscripts with intricate borders, capital letters adorned with vines and creatures, and illustrations painted with gold leaf and vibrant pigments. These illuminated pages were works of art as much as text, created to glorify God and beauty simultaneously. The gold caught the light, making the page seem to glow. The word illuminate means to light up, and these pages did, literally and spiritually. The printing plate bites into the page. In intaglio printing, such as engraving or etching, the image is carved into a metal plate. Ink fills the grooves, and the plate is pressed against dampened paper with tremendous force. The paper is pushed into the recessed lines, picking up ink and texture. You can feel the raised lines on the back of the print, the memory of pressure, the paper yielding to metal, accepting the mark, becoming the image. Paperweights anchor the thought. In the age before bound books were common, or when working with loose manuscripts in drafty studies, the paperweight was an essential tool. Often made of heavy glass, marble, or bronze, it served a simple but vital purpose: keeping the page still. It anchored the light, fluttering sheet against the invisible pull of the air. The paperweight is a guardian of stillness, a heavy reminder that even the lightest things need to be held in place to be read and understood. Bookplates mark ownership. A bookplate is a small printed label pasted inside the front cover of a book declaring ownership. Ex libris, from the library of. They were often decorated with coats of arms, illustrations, or personal mottos. A bookplate transforms a book from a commodity into a possession, a piece of a personal library, a statement of identity. This book is mine. It has a home. It belongs. Dust motes dance in library light. In quiet libraries, sunlight slants through windows, illuminating particles of dust suspended in the air. These motes drift slowly, rising and falling in invisible currents, catching the light like tiny stars. They are the detritus of paper, of old bindings, of pages turning. They are the library breathing, its atmosphere made visible, a slow waltz of matter too small to matter, yet beautiful in its aimless floating. Archival paper is acid-free. To ensure long-term preservation, modern archival paper is made without acids that cause yellowing and brittleness. It is buffered with alkaline compounds, usually calcium carbonate, which neutralizes any acids that might develop over time. Documents printed on archival paper can last hundreds of years without degradation. It is paper made with the future in mind, designed not for today, but for the hands that will hold it a century from now. Paper can be handmade at home. With a simple frame, some old fabric scraps and water, anyone can make paper. Tear the fabric into small pieces, blend it with water into pulp, pour it onto a screen, and press out the water. The result is rough, uneven, and beautiful, a sheet made by your hands. It connects you to centuries of papermakers, to the same process, the same transformation of fiber into surface, chaos into order. The rustle of pages is a sound of thought. When you turn a page, the paper whispers. It is a soft sound, barely audible but unmistakable. It marks progression, the movement from one idea to the next, the passage of time measured in sheets. In the silent room, the rustle of pages is the only sound, a rhythm of reading, of discovery, of words being consumed and considered. It is the sound of thought made audible. Paper can burn, but also survive. Paper is fragile, flammable, vulnerable to water and fire. Yet countless manuscripts have survived wars, floods, and fires, preserved by luck or care or accident. Paper can be destroyed in seconds, but it can also endure for centuries. Its fragility is part of its meaning. It demands care. It rewards preservation. What is written on paper is entrusted to the future, a quiet plea to be remembered. Libraries are silent by tradition. The library is a temple of quiet, a place where noise is unwelcome, where whispers replace conversation, where the loudest sound is the turning of a page. This silence is not empty. It is full of concentration, of minds at work, of thoughts forming in the presence of books. The silence is a kind of respect, an acknowledgement that reading requires stillness, that thought needs quiet to unfold. Book mold grows in damp places. When paper is stored in humid environments, mold can grow on its surface, forming patches of white, green, or black. The mold feeds on the cellulose fibers, weakening the paper and staining it permanently. Librarians and archivists fight a constant battle against moisture, using climate control and dehumidifiers to protect collections. Paper needs to breathe, but it must breathe dry air. Dampness is its enemy, decay waiting in the moisture. Foxing is the freckles of old paper. Foxing refers to the brown spots that appear on aged paper, caused by iron particles reacting with moisture and oxygen. These spots, scattered across the page like freckles, are a sign of age, of paper growing old. They do not necessarily indicate damage, but they mark the passage of time, the slow chemistry of aging written in rust-colored dots. Paper conservation is a delicate art. Conservators repair damaged books and documents using techniques passed down through generations. They mend tears with Japanese tissue and wheat paste, remove stains with careful chemistry, and stabilize fragile pages by encasing them in protective sleeves. Each repair is reversible, done with materials that will not harm the original. Conservation is an act of love, a commitment to preserving the past for the future. The grain of paper affects how it folds. Paper fibers align in one direction during manufacturing, creating a grain. Paper folds more easily along the grain and resists folding against it. Bookbinders must pay attention to grain direction, ensuring pages turn smoothly and bindings do not warp. The grain is invisible but influential, a hidden structure that shapes how paper behaves, how it moves, how it responds to pressure. A ream is a bundle of history. The ream has been the standard unit of paper for centuries, though the number has shifted. Medieval papermakers counted a ream as 480 sheets, 20 quires of 24 pages each. Today, we standardized it to 500. The word itself comes from the Arabic rizma, meaning a bundle. A ream is heavy and substantial, a brick of potential energy. Holding a full ream is holding hours of future writing, a physical block of white surfaces waiting to be filled. Paper cuts heal slowly. The edge of a sheet of paper is surprisingly sharp, capable of slicing skin in a thin, precise line. Paper cuts are shallow but painful, and they heal slowly because the wound is so clean that the skin does not swell or seal quickly. It is a small reminder that paper, for all its softness, has edges, boundaries, the capacity to mark not just the page, but the hand that holds it. The last page is both an ending and a beginning. When you reach the final page of a book, the story ends, but your relationship with it does not. You close the cover, set it on the shelf, and it becomes part of your internal library, the books that have shaped you. The last page is not a conclusion but a threshold. The words remain, the book waits, and you carry it with you, invisibly, forever. Paper is patient. It does not demand to be filled. It does not insist on greatness. It simply offers itself blank and ready, willing to hold whatever you give it. A shopping list, a love letter, a manifesto, a doodle. Paper does not judge the worth of what is written upon it. It holds everything equally with the same quiet dignity. It is the most patient of surfaces, waiting in stillness for the scratch of pen, the pressure of type, the touch of human thought made visible. And now the pages begin to settle, one atop the other, soft as falling leaves. We've drifted through 50 quiet truths, from the nests of wasps to the silence of libraries. You are part of this history. The words you've read tonight were once ideas, held in minds, transferred to paper, and carried to you across years. Every page you turn connects you to everyone who has ever read. Tonight, as you rest, the libraries remain. The pages are still. The ink is dry. And paper, patient and unchanging, waits in the darkness, ready to hold your dreams. If you're still awake, you can watch the next chapter now. I hope you sleep well and dream of quiet rooms. Good night.